All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video. I've got a banger for you today. Per usual, my name's Jeremy Haynes, and I am intending to help you hit your $1 million months. In today's video, I'm gonna go over $1 million a month company culture. Now, before you get all cheesed out thinking I'm talking about a bunch of bullshit, it's very important to note, when you are naive in understanding the implications of what company culture is, what it means, and like being able to take it from, just to be clear, like there's a lot of people out there who describe company culture and it just kind of sounds like inapplicable advice. You know, it doesn't sound like stuff that you can actually use. It's described in a lot of like very broad generalities, and I never really found a lot of application out of a lot of company culture type advice. I just want to be clear. If you've also been jaded by other people who have taught, company culture stuff, just to be clear, this will not be one of those videos, okay? This video in particular is gonna show you the lessons that I've learned working in these environments and demonstrating to you what you need to inherit as belief systems, mental frames, and like operating states for you and your staff within the organization to have extremely high probabilities of hitting $1 million months. So without further ado, we're gonna dive right into it. Let me get started by saying this, okay? $1 million months are not a mistake. 0.1% of all businesses on earth exceed $10 million a year. So you've got to start acting and behaving like 0.1% of the population on earth. For a lot of you sitting here watching this, you have a really high probability, if you're the right demographic on my channel here, to already be in the top 1% of people on earth. And I'm not talking like the little guys making like, $400,000 a year or whatever. I'm talking about the big dogs that are already doing a couple $100,000 a month and you just haven't cracked getting to $1 million a month yet. There's just subtle differences, And to be clear, like we had a guy the other day, gets on the phone with us, $500,000 a month, been stuck there for like a year and a half, plus or minus maybe tens of thousands of dollars a month, but the average is $500K a month. This guy's a baller. He watches one of my videos, he realizes very quickly, he's like, with a few different like funnel changes, a few things that I'm clearly not doing now, I can get to $1 million a month. And that's tremendous, to be clear. If you can implement a tactic or a strategy that I talk about, that's obviously gonna come off as easier and something that, it's a funnel. You know what I mean? It's an ad strategy. It's not like you have to manipulate the belief system of all the people in your staff and like change the dynamic of how people operate using company culture tactics. But I just wanna be clear, like there's a big difference between people who have had $1 million a month and people who hit $1 million a month and then exceed it, and maintain it and continue to grow. And that doesn't happen by mistake. That only happens when the company culture element is there. So to be clear, number one, and this one's the most important in my opinion, the right people, okay? With the wrong people, you don't stand a fucking chance. You don't have a shot at hitting $1 million months consistently. Like I said, you might be able to hit it here and there, but like, dude, you're not hitting consistent $1 million months with the wrong people, okay? And this comes in a few different forms. I'll go over a few, okay? Number one being A players. A players, they absolutely hate B and C players. There's a very low probability if you're doing a couple $100,000 a month, you've got D and F players, okay? Or C players for that matter. It's like the B and C players, they're typically these mediocre folks who have, they're like regular people. I mean, they're just normies in the finest form. They don't have exceptional skills. They don't come off as impressive. You're not like enthused when you have to introduce somebody who doesn't regularly interact with your staff to one of those staff members. They're people that just they get like the job done for what they need to do, but like they're not doing it exceptionally well. They're not even trying to do it exceptionally well. And even worse, even if they did do their absolute best that they could possibly do, they still don't even come close to what a true A player is gonna be able to accomplish within your organization. A players are fucking machines. Like they are money-driven monsters. They are driven by accomplishment. They are perfectionists who still bias towards action. They are exceptionally aggressive with speed and urgency and once again, really just judging themselves off of the accomplishments that they make, the level of the accomplishments they make, and almost immediately after they accomplish something big, there's just a level of satiation that's not met. They immediately become more like, okay, I need to do more. I want more. I want to push this thing further. And when incentivized properly, I mean, dude, watch out. Like you have a baller staff. If every person in that team is somebody that can be bragged about, if they brag about working with each other, like as an example, I had this team I worked in. It was a new team. They were somebody that, without describing all the details and kind of giving it away, was just really, really well funded. Okay, so they could hire exceptional staff. And I was one of the first like 3 people within this particular team. And generally we don't take on deals like that, to be clear, but this deal made sense, okay? And I remember they bought a guy out for $10 million and gave him stock within the organization, which in this company is a company you'd want to have stock in, to be clear, because they had a really high probability of actually making that stock valuable one day. And dude, no joke, like I'll never forget that guy. That guy, okay, so first of all, yeah, he gets $10 million in his pocket, and then he has an incentive based on like salary and once again, these stock compensation methods that he was provided. And this guy, he came off like he was on a quadruple dose of the highest Adderall in like the best way possible. He was so locked in. You talk to a guy like this and just instantly it makes you elevate yourself. It forces you to be the greatest possible version of yourself and then grow beyond that just based on having to interact with an individual like this, you know? You love to be held accountable by people like this within an organization. Once again, you brag openly about the fact you get to work with people like this. They brag about you ideally because you also should be an A player within an organization like that. And more importantly than anything else, like these are people you can trust within their positions. Like you give them targets, you give them things that you need done, like they will get it done. They will get it done exceptionally well. And to be clear, in addition to that, you'll have to be involved very little besides getting them the things that they need. And man, God forbid you move slow, you won't retain a lot of A players if that's the case. A players, it's important to note, like the reason I say this company culture stuff matters a lot, they don't work in like random jobs. Like they work in companies and positions that have strong growth potential. You know, they look for forward movement. They look for progress. They look for growth opportunities. They look for that accountability. You know, they look for other people within the staff and the leaders within that staff, people managing them. Once again, you would want to say out loud, I can't even believe I have the opportunity to work with these folks. They seem like they are literally some of the best people on earth. That's how critical A player descriptions need to be when you're talking about this. And yeah, you're gonna pay them well. Like that's the biggest thing with people that get stuck between like 100K and 900K a month. You know, they just do not pay exceptionally well. They're like scared to pay. You know, they think, okay, well, I've been paying people like 5 to 10K a month or whatever, and I've not paid any rev shares, and like that's got me to a couple 100K a month. Like I could probably do that same thing and get to a couple million a month. And like, dude, that's just not how it works. Like A players are smart. They're some of the smartest people on earth that are choosing to work for your organization rather than just go out and likely outcompete whatever you're doing in your own business if they chose to do it. You know, like these are highly sophisticated folks. So they understand what they're doing and what they're contributing to your business. And like I said, they need to be incentivized as such, you know, for their contribution. Now, to be clear, if you are willing to pay, okay, and you are able to attract and retain this level of staff, without exaggeration, this in itself can create, so I start with this variable, this can create the company culture of the $1 million a month earners, okay? These people don't tolerate anything less. They just, how they operate, how they are, how they talk, how they hold things accountable, the speed in which they'll demand from everything and everybody, you know, from you as the management and the leadership in the organizations. Like, they just do not fuck around in any way, shape, or form. So if you're able to attract, retain, and like work with these people, you'll be off to a huge start on $1 million a month company culture, and that dynamic that it adds, it starts to really show itself. You know, like everything starts to pick up, really speed and urgency, and this like open communication, this dialogue of like being up each other's ass about getting stuff done in such like a friendly way, but also in a somewhat like aggressive way. They're also very respectful, so I don't want to make them sound like they're dicks or anything, you know, because like these people are not dicks. They're just about the action, and everybody else in the team is about the action. And God forbid you have a B or C player in that organization. They're gonna bitch and whine so much. They're gonna bitch and whine so much about working with A players, dude. They're gonna talk to leadership. They're gonna talk to HR. They're gonna be whiny. They're gonna be saying things like egotistical. They're gonna be saying things like, oh, asshole, dick. Like, you know, they're just gonna be complaining. You know, they're gonna be complaining that they're having to do their job to a greater level than just being one of those people that like coast in an organization and get paid what they get paid to accomplish like a basic job, you know? So anyway, dude, A players, money, absolutely critical. To be clear, and this kind of goes into my second point when it comes to like the right people, and it kind of plays into to this point, to be clear, so I'll include it as a subcategory. When I say the right people, these mean like real A players, okay? And I know this might seem a little redundant, but I'll emphasize it with a story so I can give you an example, okay? So there was a client that we literally just recently signed, okay? The guy was stuck at 250K a month for like 3 years. It's an insane time period to be stuck at that amount. And you know, I get on some calls with this guy and I'm like talking to him, and he's revealing things about the business that are like keeping it stuck. And we get to the point where we were gonna look at the ads manager, and he talks specifically about his ad guy that he had hired, okay? And this guy is like framed that he's working with one of the best people, okay? And he doesn't know any better. Just like a younger guy, you know, once again, 250K a month, like he's been there for a long time, but there's a lot of red flags, but he doesn't have anything to compare it to, okay? So some of these red flags that come up, like the guy would start to complain, the client would start to complain about like lead quality. He'd be like, hey, like there's a lot of brokies coming through. Can we do anything to fix that? And the advertiser would say something along the lines of like, no, like your offer just attracts a lot of broke people. Okay, you go into the ad account and I audit, what's going on, and I just wanted to see like what tactically is happening inside of the ad account, like what are the strategies, what's the guy optimizing for, all that fun stuff. And so I log in, and this was shocking. I've not seen, without exaggerating, anything like this in 11 years of advertising, okay? There was one video, that was it, nothing else, no headlines, no body copy, okay? The pixel was on a page, it's a call funnel, so there was an opt-in page, there was a call page, which is like the video and like an application, the scheduler page, and then a thank you page. To be clear, the advertiser was optimizing for the standard event of lead, okay? If you know anything about advertising, lead is a very like surface level standard event to optimize for in a call funnel. So the intention of the funnel, once again, is to generate qualified booked calls. This advertiser was sending all of the opt-ins, all of the unqualified applicants, and the very few qualified applicants that came through per day, all back to the lead standard event. So the pixel had no data to optimize with. There was zero proper data training going on in this ad account. There was zero best practices, okay? On the targeting level, by the way, when your client's complaining like, hey, I'm getting a bunch of turds coming through my funnel, like, can you do anything to fix it? The guy just said, yeah, no, like your offer just attracts broke people. Well, the guy was doing broad targeting. So there was zero, once again, broad targeting is cool to do, to be clear. And it can be considered a best practice today, no doubt, but it's a best practice when you have a lot of proper data on your pixel that you've conditioned through proper targeting first in most instances, or at the least messaging in the ads to influence who out of everybody on earth that he's broad targeting, those ads are gonna go after. So to be clear, this was just awful. I mean, this was one of the worst like ad accounts I'd ever seen. Structured terribly, no account simplification. Once again, just literally zero best practices across the board. But back to my point, the client, okay? The guy who hired this guy's paid $7,500 a month for this position, by the way, or like $7K a month. And dude, the guy was framed like, oh, I'm working with one of the best advertisers I could possibly hire, okay? And here's the worst part, like because it wasn't a real A player, it was like fake data and fake lessons, okay? And this is terrible when you really look at it. So as an example, like we get to the point where, we're just starting to tell the client like, yeah, so like this is fucked, this is fucked, this is fucked, this is fucked. Like, good news is obviously we can come in and rectify all this. It would be actually crazy. We haven't done anything with this client yet. We're in the process of like literally launching. Matter of fact, I'll probably end this video here and go launch this particular client. I'll report back on the impact I immediately have within this organization. But my point being is like, dude, a guy like me comes in, does all the right things, a real A player, and I'll push that organization forward, break all the random cycles and habits that everybody's developed for just being essentially stagnant for 3 years in a row at $250K a month. Outside of all that and doing the best practices and whatnot, just to be clear, when it comes to like fake data and fake lessons, like this advertiser would say things like, oh, we shouldn't launch at night, we should only launch in the morning. And the client like relays that kind of stuff to me. He's like, hey, like I can get you access to the ad account right now, but like, isn't it bad to launch at nighttime? Like, shouldn't we launch during the day? And it's like, well, where do you get that lesson from? And the guy's like, oh, from this guy. And there's so many little instances like that for this particular guy as this one example, fake data, fake lessons. This particular client is getting a $1,000 on a good day, cost per qualified call. And they're not even scheduling, by the way. The guy is dialing the opt-ins because nobody, like I'm talking like a single digit percentage per day of the opt-ins are applying. Nobody, like literally 0% are actually then scheduling a call. So the only data that Pixel's getting is people who opt in. They have a team of setters. This guy, thankfully, this client who's doing $250K a month is a fucking machine. He's got A player characteristics himself. And he's got A player salespeople as well. And you can tell because they're doing $250K a month off of like literally one of the worst setups I've ever seen in my life, okay? And it's because they're just dialing all of the opt-ins. And these opt-ins are like, he's describing some of them as homeless, like sleeping in their cars, working extremely low wage jobs. And like I said, nothing done from an advertising perspective. Now, like I said, when I say real A players, not A players that like you at your current level of awareness are like convinced are an A player. Like dog, I'm talking like, these people have a reputation. Like real A players, when you ask about them, like other people see them who are in the market to hire other A players and they say shit like, damn, you're lucky, dude. Like that's a baller hire. Or they say things like to acknowledge the accomplishments of that A player, because A players typically come with strong accomplishments, strong traits and characteristics where, once again, other people in your field or other people in that A player's historical field can vouch and be like, yeah, dog, that person's legit. Like and like I said, as soon as you put them alongside of your existing staff, the B and C players are exposed like instantaneously, and the other A players are coming to you and saying, that was a phenomenal hire. Like that person's awesome. Like they're gonna do great here. There's lots of ways to tell once again you have real A players. When a real A player comes in and sees that shit that I just talked about in that example, it's like, dude, no, that was not even close to an A player. And I won't say this guy's Instagram name because it'll obviously give it away in an instant. And I don't want anybody here like going to make fun of the guy, He can improve his skills through time. Not everybody has to stay trash forever like that. But to be clear, like, dude, this guy's ad name, this guy's at name on Instagram was like, once again, I'm not even gonna say it, but it was essentially a self-proclaimed title of like, I'm the best at advertising. Just insane. insane. So anyway, to be clear, the right people, okay? A players, and they better be real fucking A players. Because if not, once again, you get fake data, you get fake lessons, and therefore you make fake conclusions. And then that, once again, can keep you stagnant. So really good lessons from a book called Vital Lies and Simple Truths. One of my favorite books. You open this book and it does a simple lesson with you. It says, okay, hold the book like this far from your face, and there's this little shape in the book. And as you're like adjusting, you'll see that the shape just disappears. And it's to emphasize the point that, this whole book is gonna reveal to you that you can manipulate reality to make things disappear. And so when doing so, you can avoid pain, and all these other implications in the book, but simply put, like through small shifts in reality, through lies and like fake truths, you are putting yourself in a position where you won't see reality for what it is. That's what happened here. This guy has no idea what's actually going on in real life. He has an idea of what's going on in some like made up world that has been built and that he's been living in because of all this manipulated fake data. You see what I'm saying? So dude, $1 million a month company culture, okay? The right people, A players, real A players, okay? 2, and this one's critical, and it comes off as, once again, dickish for B and C players, but A players love this, okay? People who work within $1 million company cultures, like they love this shit. It's accountability, okay? So back in the day, I worked for a famous sales trainer who's now a big real estate guy, and I was his first digital marketer he ever had. And I was 19 years old. I was blessed with this opportunity, would not be where I am today without this guy, to be clear. Long story short, okay, as soon as I come into this company at 19 years old, am just like an A player would, highly impressed with the organization, highly impressed with the people within the organization, like just pumped to have the opportunity to work there, learning like an infinite amount. But one of the best things about the specific environment was the accountability. Like every single department was every morning in a morning meeting, like openly sharing statistics and KPIs about their specific divisions. So you'd have like salespeople sharing their statistics. You'd have like marketing teams sharing their statistics. Marketing and sales would be like broke down into different categories as well, like setters sharing their stats, closers sharing their stats, marketers sharing like their ad stats, their email stats, the social media stats, like copywriters sharing their like split test stats or their open rates or click-through rates on different things, like every single department, down to accounting, sharing statistics. Okay, and doing it in front of everybody. So if your statistic was down, you would have a line graph, okay, that would be every week printed and posted on the wall of your division's like physical department in the office. Nowadays, if you have a remote team, it'd be like shared to you every week, okay, transparently. And if the statistic that you're responsible for, and this is one of the most important things, like every person had a statistic or KPI that they specifically influenced and they took ownership of it, okay? They had full responsibility over that stat. So if and when something went wrong, the management, the executives could go to that specific individual and that department and be like, what the fuck's going on with this statistic? Like, what are we gonna do to influence and turn this thing around? And they would ask like a series of questions. They'd be like, okay, are you missing anything? Like, do you need any training? Is there something that like we're not doing that's gonna help you with this statistic? And that would be an opportunity for that specific person who's responsible for it to share like, yeah, like this is going on or that's going on, or like, no, I'm good, And if the answer was like, no, I'm good, then okay, great. Like you're gonna turn it around then, like what's your plan? And then they'd make them share a plan, like, yeah, this is what I intend to do. And long story short, if the statistic was down 2 weeks in a row, like they'd have the same talk with you again at the end of the second week, but the end of that second week would be more of a conversation of like, okay, hey, just to be clear, like as an organization, we can't tolerate this statistic being down. Like we have to get it to this stat. Otherwise, if we don't, then to be clear, like we gotta find somebody who will. Like you understand that, right? And you'd be like, yeah, of course. And long story short, like, dude, that level of accountability might seem high pressure. Like B and C players, like fucking would hate that, dude. They'd quit so fast. But dude, A players, I'm telling you now, A players would fucking love that level of accountability. They'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like I need to push it. I need to get this shit figured out. And because that happens in the first place, like you'd rarely see an A player let that statistic slide. It just wouldn't happen because they know the ramification. They know they're not gonna have a job because A players know they're judged off of result, not off of time and effort. They're judged off of results, okay? Hard workers don't give a shit about time and effort. They give a shit about the result. So to be clear, dude, this level of accountability, man, developed just money hungry monsters, People who would do anything to keep that stat up, anything ethical and integrous. So anyway, my point being, accountability is $1 million a month company culture characteristic, but it's done in like such a graceful way. It makes you, as the person who has that level of accountability coming onto you, you just, like I said, you just love it, because it inspires performance and it pushes the business forward. And it's important to note, like this is realistic. It's not like made up and unrealistic. This is one thing that I commonly find in the businesses not doing $1 million a month is they have no idea what their stats should be. So because they don't have A players, they can't trust like what those people in those positions they have hired say to them should be like the statistics. And remember, B and C players will manipulate data to be like easier for them to accomplish. So as an example, if your real cost per qualified call could be like $150 or like $75, a B or C player would be like, oh yeah, our cost per qualified call should be like $500, you know? That way, if they're well below it, you're gonna be like, oh, good job, little Timmy, you know, great work. But it's like, dude, A players would be like, all right, yeah, so my cost per qualified call right now is like 120. I think I could get it down to like 90. By the way, I did a financial model that showed exactly what it can be at the most. The maximum cost per qualified call that we can tolerate is $177, you know, based on all these other statistics in the funnel. So my point being, the executives and the management, if your A players aren't coming to you, or if the people you have in your current staff positions aren't coming to you and saying like, hey, I modeled it out with math. This is what our minimums like and our maximums should be. This is our maximum for this statistic that it can be for us to still be profitable, the desired profit. So like the executives and the managers' jobs in most instances in $1 million a month company cultures is not to necessarily say like, this is the maximum this statistic could be or the minimum this statistic can be. It's more so to say, this is the minimum ROAS I expect from you. You know, this is it. Like if you're responsible for advertising in my case, or like you're responsible for like sales or whatever, you have to know like what the minimum ROAS is. That's one of the most important stats. Okay, if you know what the minimum ROAS is, once again, the A player will do the math and they'll financially model out like what the other stats need to be in order to meet that minimum and then obviously exceed it. And then ideally, once again, based on an incentives perspective, the incentives align to like increase the amount of money that the A player gets as like the greater and greater tiers of performance are achieved. So if, once again, with like a proper flat like rev share percentage or, you know, whatever, there are a lot of just natural, you know, successful influences that happen on those stats without having to do much else and like, you know, increase like bonuses or, you know, whatever. My point being, dude, accountability and seeing the math for what it is and having like realistic, this is what these numbers need to be, that's tremendous. And ideally, you know, from an accountability perspective, as long as those statistics are being exceeded, you know, the A players will be open to being pushed to continue to do better. And they'll also give you a little pushback. Like I have a client right now that the sales manager of this specific company and me, the advertiser, we were just told that, you know, we need to have like a minimum of a 15-to-1 ROAS. And we were like, you know, hey, where'd you get this from? They showed us their math and both the sales manager and I were like, well, I mean, you can accomplish that number that you need to hit in terms of like your bottom line by spending more, having a lot more realistic KPIs for these different benchmarks that you've come up with for all the different stats throughout the advertising and sales process. And once again, you can still accomplish what you're trying to accomplish with a lower ROAS. So then once again, as A players, we'll give some counter perspective that's realistic based on like what we know to be possible and also more probable. That's the thing, A players work in like what's more probable, to be clear. They don't just work in like, you know, okay, you're gonna push them to the absolute limit and they'll always try to do better and better and better and better. Like they also know, yeah, as an example, if I had a client that was raising capital and they were trying to get accredited investors that had a minimum of 500K and they said the cost per qualified call has got to be $25, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, that's just not possible. You know, like it could be possible, but like, it's just extremely improbable. You know, like here's what's more probable in comparison. And by the way, once again, here's the math that shows you'd still be like exceptionally profitable, reach your desired like cost of raising capital percentage and be able to scale into that aggressively in comparison to like, if you limit me to only getting qualified calls that are $25, you know, you barely be able to spend money like this and that. So A players work in reality. Okay. And once again, from the book, Vital Lies and Simple Truths, like that's what you want. You shouldn't expect to hire A players and just constantly be able to push them to improve and improve and improve and improve. Because once again, there is a point where they'll just tell you straight up like, hey, it's just not that probable that we're going to be able to get it to that point. Now, they'll appreciate you trying to push them once again, but they'll also talk in realities. So, okay, anyway, my point being, dude, the right people, accountability, and then I've said this a few times, but regardless, I will need to make it its own category, and that is incentives, okay? Incentives are critical when you have $1 million a month company cultures because, look, you want to get into the top 1.1% of all business earnings on earth. Like you got to be in a position where you understand like the people who contribute to that are going to want to get paid, you know, and people have different goals and people have different motives. There was a really good personality test and they self-marketed themselves as the most accurate of all personality tests. And they're a company called Culture Index. And Culture Index is, to be clear, I mean, it might sound a little biased because I've been well trained on it and I've also taken all the other personality tests. So I think it's fair to say this, but they are by far the best in my opinion of all the different like personality tests that you could take out there. And when you actually get the proper training from them, like they give you this thick booklet, you go in person to, if they're still here to be clear, their offices in Dallas, and they walk you through like what these little dots represent on their scales that they give people after they take a test and they assign different like personality types and what the motives of each one of these roles are. And it's always scary accurate. That's why I like it a lot. It's always scary accurate. Meaning when you take this, and I've had people who like disagree with their results and they'll take it again and they end up being the exact same, you know? And it's so cool, you know? Even the people who disagree like end up agreeing, you know? So it's that kind of test. But regardless, you take this and you have your staff take this and you see like what people are really motivated by. It's not always a money incentive. Sometimes it's just the level of accomplishment. Sometimes it's like an altruistic, like empathetical, you know, I want to make a substantial positive impact impact on planet Earth kind of thing. Sometimes it's this desire to work in like really high level environments that push them and create a monster out of these individuals, you know, in a really good way, like a personal development journey that they're on. And they want to get well paid while they're doing it, but they're not just like money hungry gremlins like some of us out here, you know? These people are desiring, once again, to just be in an environment that constantly brings out a newly best version of themselves on an ongoing basis. There's people who desire obviously exceptional amounts of money in what they do. And in addition to that, there's like combinations of these things. So being aware from an incentive perspective, like what your people want, you know? And nowadays, I would also add freedom. Like freedom is also a big thing that a lot of people care about nowadays in like their work roles when it comes to this remote culture that a lot of people have been able to experience post-COVID, which essentially comes down to the fact that like, dude, you might have an A player that, and by the way, a lot of very serious people prefer routines and like to be in a particular place. But at the same time, I've seen A players that exist that like travel all around the world and are like playing the nomad rule, you know? But still, I digress. My point being, incentives aren't always just money. Once again, it's like money, freedom, personal development journeys, desire to be in like an empathetical, altruistic position where they make high impacts on Earth. These are people who care about legacy in most instances. Like here in Miami as an example, I just moved into this penthouse here, and along the skyline, there's just tremendous development work being done all the time. There's people building like multi-hundred foot tall buildings. There's a bridge over here in particular right by where I live that is like architecturally beautiful. I remember my buddy Brandon and I were driving past it the other day when we were coming back from lunch, and I was like, this is so impressive what's being done here. Like, this is why we need people to go to college, you know, like why we need people to do this kind of stuff. Like, this is beautiful, this is amazing. But at the same time, like both him and I were like, how the fuck are they even doing this kind of thing? That type of person working that role, like they're not being exceptionally well paid, but at the same time, like they're doing something that's gonna be on the Miami skyline and be a pretty significant attraction as well, even though it's just a part of a bridge. Like they're building a piece of a skyline, you know, like that type of person doesn't do it for the money, they do it for the impact, they do it for that legacy, like altruistic, empathetical perspective. Okay, to be clear, incentives. Incentives are so critical, so important, and they drive the reason why. That's the thing. It's like the incentives, just to help you understand, like you probably heard like why is so important many times throughout your lifetimes. And it is like the why is the incentive. That's the main driver of why the people who are the top players in your organization and why you are going to give a fuck to scale this thing to multi-millions of dollars a month are going to do it. It's because you have a strong motive as to why. You know, people don't just do things for like random reasons, and they surely don't progress to being in the top 0.1% of all business earners on earth for a random reason. You know, they have distinctly clear whys. They have individual whys and they have company whys, okay? Individual and company is different. What I just talked about in the examples I provided were individual whys. Company whys have to be like through propaganda in most instances, pushed onto your people to inherit as their own beliefs. It's like, as an example, in SpaceX with Elon Musk, dude, he attracts some of the greatest people on earth for those specific roles that he has hired within his business. Why? Well, yeah, there's individual reasons why. Like that company is one of the most highly valued private businesses on earth right now. And yeah, they give stock options, by the way. And in addition to that, you can privately buy from those employees their stocks and hold them until the company goes public one day. That's for the money-driven people. But like, dude, from an empathetical, legacy, like altruistic perspective, those people obviously have it right off the bat. But like, dude, the company why is they want humans as a species to become multi-planetary beings. Like they have a belief system that they've inherited as employees of that organization of, we have a mission. Like we don't just building fucking rockets that self-land and advancing technology at such a rapid pace, accomplishing things that literally just years ago, every time they accomplished something new is deemed like impossible. I remember there was some dickhead NASA rocket scientist who worked on like the old rockets, and he saw the third version of the Falcon rocket, and he literally like publicly called him out in a tweet. He was like, yeah, I mean, this is just like the base model. Like there's all this other shit that's missing. And then to be clear, one of the people who worked on that newly innovative rocket propulsion system fucking quote tweeted the guy with the rocket blasting and the statistics of it showing that it did work with the little bit of stuff that was visible on that new propulsion system. And the guy, once again, who worked at NASA historically on the old rockets was like dumbfounded. He was like, what the fuck? Like you guys have progressed that much on rocket propulsion technology? Like what? He was literally shocked. He had no comprehension of the fact that what he literally saw in front of him being real was even possible. So he interpreted it as like false and not real. But then once again, got proven wrong. My point being is like, dude, the people, I bet that guy got physically high from that who works at SpaceX, from just flexing on that old dude, just saying like, no, dog, we're doing this shit. You know what I mean? And they're not doing it for a random reason. They're not just doing it to flex on old people who don't know what they're talking about. They're doing it because, once again, They want to get human beings as a multi-planetary species. Like they view it as excessively important, and there's a bunch of company whys for that. Like one thing Elon always talks about is that an eventual global war, especially just given the nuclear threat right now on Earth, is inevitable. Like in his eyes, he constantly pushes that propaganda on his staff and the human race as like, this is an inevitable thing that we're gonna come across. Like we have to become a multi-planetary species just to hedge against that and like not end humanity. In addition to that, it's like one of Elon Musk's favorite book series is this Isaac Asimov series. And I don't remember the specific name of the books. I have it around here somewhere, I'm sure, but it's this like 7-book series, and each book is a thickie. You know, it's this fiction series of essentially like pushing human beings to be multi-planetary species, and these like stories that are told of why it's important. And dude, it's a very inspiring set of books, to be fair. I haven't worked through 100% of them. I think there's 7, but dude, they're great books. I mean, if you manage to pick apart even just a few sentences of those books, they're great and they inspire you. And you can see clearly like why Elon and his entire staff over at SpaceX want to make humans not just go to Mars, but like well beyond that, you know? And that level of optimism, like that level of excessively beyond our current reality type beliefs, is what pulls the organization to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, is because the vision that they all share, you know, and that they all believe is true and possible. That's the most important thing. True and possible, okay? Is like, man, it's so big, it's so massive that all the little things that they accomplish in between, like dude, landing a rocket is a big deal, but it's like at the same time to them, I'm not exaggerating when I say it's like they look at it as like a small stepping stone in the grand journey. You know, like when they land people on Mars, set up a civilization, and like officially we're a multi-planetary species, yeah, they're gonna be pumped that they accomplished that. But I promise you, they're gonna instantly be like, dude, cool, like baby step number 1 on Mars accomplished, like let's get this shit built, you know? Let's keep moving it forward, because they have a grand vision. It's like, dude, companies that do like a couple $100K a month selling some frivolous bullshit, it's like they don't have grand visions. And that's why they're at where they're at. Like what they're currently doing to them is big. They lack company-wise. They lack aligning with incentives on individual-wise, you know? So therefore they just fucking spin their tires in the mud. They don't do anything. You know what I mean? They don't accomplish much because there's nothing for them, there's nothing that they're chasing to accomplish. You know, just to be clear, if you love information like this, I'd encourage you to join my Inner Circle program. There's a link below in the description. I talk like this all the time. It's a group full of rich people trying to get a hell of a lot richer. I do twice a month one-on-one calls, weekly group calls, 4 times a year masterminds. We have a group chat full of everybody trying to get a hell of a lot richer, asking questions of one another, sharing information. Once again, that's where we also share our weekly group calls that we do on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And a lot of people ask me, like, dude, why do you do that? You know, like, why do you fucking charge what you charge and like have any time dedicated to that? Because I fucking love talking to people who are like you. I love talking to people that want to make a fuckload more money, that have grand visions, that want to bring it into reality. And I have a belief system myself. When I know I can help people, I want to help people. I think it's unethical not to help people when they ask for my help, especially when I know I can do it and you express that you want that help. I love that program. Outside of the money that I directly get paid from it, I've made such an exceptional amount of money on that program from the things I've learned within my own mastermind group. The last 10 people who have joined have literally come and been such high earners. I'm so proud of who we're attracting into this nowadays. We have 130K as the lowest per month earner that joined in over the last 10 people. The highest one doing 900K a month. Like there's some serious fucking people in that group, to be clear. And I'd love to have you be the next one in there. To be clear, you gotta apply obviously because we only want the hitters, and because I do one-on-one, once again, you gotta be the right type of person if you wanna join in. I don't just sell that shit to everybody. I also have a limited space that I can do my masterminds at here at the Penthouse. So long story short, look, if you're interested, apply, talk to my team. We'll get you onboarded and we'll get you into that group if you're the right type of person. But to be clear, look, I've got stuff to do. You've got stuff to do. Thanks for being a part of the video here today. Subscribe, like, comment, share it with somebody who needs to hear this information. And for the love of God, develop $1 million a month company culture if you actually want to make it possible for yourself. Because I'll tell you what, it sure does increase the probability tremendously if you do. And if you don't, man, Godspeed, good luck. See you in another video.